3000.
All right, my name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by MGH, also known as Michelle Grace Hunder. Michelle, thanks for coming.
No worries. I wore the earrings just in case you forget.
Yes,
so.
well, there you go. You can't miss that. I'm sure people mess your name up and say Hunter. Does that piss you off?
I don't get it as much anymore. I think definitely when I first started shooting, people mix it up all the time, but now not so much, which is nice.
You've made your way, and now people won't disrespect you.
I tell you what I get all the time, because my Instagram, I can't fit Michelle Grace Hunder because it's like too many letters or whatever. So it's Michelle G Hunder. So people that don't know my full name will say Gunder.
I thought you were going to say like G, like gangster, but Gunder.
The G is for gangster.
Oh, like Gunther, like, yeah, because it kind of looks,
Well, I guess so. They was like, oh, is it Gunder? And I'm like...
No. It's interesting how people can make up their own Instagram handles and kind of nickname themselves.
Yeah, well, that's what I did. So actually, no, I lie. Solo from Horror Show nicknamed me MGH, and it stuck. So shout out to Solo.
When you've got three names, you can see why people break it down into an acronym.
It's way too long. I get it.
That's good though. All right, so look, I appreciate you coming down. We know you're a proud Melbourneian, but let's start at the beginning. Whereabouts did you grow up?
3630. I'm a Shep girl. Shep girl for life. Yeah. Actually, not really Shep girl for life because I've been in Melbourne for so long. But my parents. That's where they kind of immigrated to, that area. They're both from Sicily.
Yep.
So they ended up in that region anyway. And that's where, myself and my brother grew up in Shepparton, which was...
There was a big migration for a lot of people of that era.
Yeah, so 1950s, into that kind of region, for sure.
I've heard a lot of people say that their parents just saw a pamphlet, like a piece of paper, and they said, we're going to Australia, and that was how it happened for a lot of people.
For sure. I think for my parents, I think they had relatives over here that said that there was work here. So it was post-war, not a lot going on, I guess, in Sicily at the time, like very hard for people to find work. So they came here. And so that's where we grew up. And to be honest, I had a very lovely childhood. Like I felt like I was quite sheltered, if that makes sense. My parents were... strict without being like crazy strict. I was allowed to do a lot growing up. So a lot of music. I was in the band, like I was band girl. I played every instrument, but I also played sport. I was really, really good at basketball. And that was like my thing growing up, was I was playing basketball from a very, very young age. And and it just was like kind of a cool place to grow up. It's just like, I feel like it's very different now.
Yeah.
And after, it wasn't long after I left, I know, drugs started to kind of infiltrate.
It does have a bad stigma these days.
It does. It's just not indicative of my experience growing up, I guess. And like some people might say it was already like, maybe I just have no idea that it was like that.
But sheltered enough.
Totally. Like I said, my parents were like, pretty strict. I wasn't allowed to do like a lot of things, go to parties and stuff like that. But my memories of Shepparton growing up were really lovely, and like long summers, great weather, swimming in, we had a pool, like stuff like that, playing tennis, playing basketball, just pretty cool childhood,
Yeah, and I think playing basketball or playing a sport tends to help you stay out of trouble a little bit.
100%. I use it as an excuse a lot as well. It's like kids would try and give me ciggies and stuff, and I'd be like, I'm an athlete.
I remember like when I used to play back in the day at the old Albert Park, it was on a Friday night, and I'm like, this is a pain in the ass on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Then as I got older, I realised that was strategic, so the kids didn't go fucking around. They actually sort of had to focus on their sport a little bit, and I think that helps a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing like 4 or 5 times a week. I was playing in the women's team when I was like 14. So everything was around basketball. And if I wasn't doing that, I was doing music. So a lot of I didn't really have that much spare time because I was like doing all these extracurricular activities.
What position were you playing?
I was shooting guard. Well, growing up, I was very tall. So I was kind of this height when I was 12. So I started as a centre.
That happens to kids, that they put them as a centre and then everyone else has a growth spurt.
Yeah,
and
I can't jump though. That's the thing. So I was terrible centre, but I could shoot the lights out. So once everyone kind of took over me and I was actually, my natural position is probably like a 2 or a 3. I still, even this day, I haven't been able to play long story, health issues, but for about 2 years now. But even up until when I was playing, I'm still, even in recreational teams now, I'm still tall enough to be like a forward or something, and I'm not comfortable as a forward. Put me out on the perimeter, I'm like very comfortable.
Will you bring the ball up as well?
I'll bring the ball up if I have to. I'm not amazing point guard, but I would say definitely, 2 or 3 position is definitely where I'm like most comfortable. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I miss it a lot, that's for sure.
Basketball, I loved playing it when I was a kid, and then your knees sort of go and things like that, and you're like, oh.
You just never like can reach the heyday. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm always frustrated with how I'm playing because it's not as good as I was when I was like 16, which is kind of when I think I was at my best, 16, 17. And
so it is a pretty unrealistic thing to be
such an unreal, totally. My husband's the same. Like, we actually met at uni, first day of university, we met playing basketball, and to this day we're still like, we were literally just watching basketball last night, this morning watching the World Cup. Like, we're obsessed with basketball still.
Let's not talk about the Boomers.
I know, it is disappointing. Yeah, we won't talk about the Boomers. Let's not go into that.
All right, so you're hanging out in Shepparton, and it's a fun place, and you're enjoying basketball, but I guess at some stage you have to sort of, and I guess there's music in the background, but you've got to discover photography or arts, or no, it's just basketball. So
long until I picked up a camera.
Really?
Yeah. So no, I was very, very focused on sport, and I went to university. So like literally the day I turned 18, I got in my car and drove to Melbourne. Which is
what you sort of have to do.
I have to, yeah. But I wanted to work in sport. I was obsessed with sport and working in. Originally, I thought maybe I wanted to be a physio. I actually did a degree, a human movement degree, so degree in sports science. But once I started the degree, I was like, wait, I don't really like these science topics. It was like biomechanics, physiology, all of that stuff. Not that I wasn't good at it, I just didn't love it. I wasn't passionate about it, but I really liked the admin, marketing side of things. So in my third year, I started kind of majoring in those subjects, like started to gear towards that. And randomly, like when I finished, I graduated and I started sending out my resume. You know what I did? This is going to show my age, but opened up the old yellow pages and I was just like looking at sports marketing and sporting organizations, and I started sending out my resume to everyone.
Mailing it.
Literally mailing it. This was like 1997, 98. 97 I would have graduated, so 98. 99, sorry, I lie. 99 I graduated. So, and the person that responded was the marketing manager at the National Basketball League. So I ended up volunteering there for about 6 months, and then they ended up giving me, my first ever job was marketing coordinator at the NBL.
Which is a good job, but at that stage the NBL was in a funny sort of spot.
No, so it was actually at the end of like an era, I guess, but before that really went to shit. Yeah. So still playing at Rod Laver Arena, they just as I left, they lost their television rights deal.
With Channel 10, I think it was back then.
I think it was with Channel 10. So that was actually one of the reasons that I left. They actually laid off a bunch of people.
They didn't have the budget anymore.
Yeah, so they were moving to Sydney, and they decided not to take everyone, and I unfortunately didn't get taken.
Who knows what would have happened if they took you to Sydney?
I know. It was weird because that was my dream job. Like I literally I peaked too soon at like 20 years of age, and I was working with all of my heroes, like all of these. It was so weird, like all these basketball players that I've been looking up to my entire life, then they like started asking me out and shit. It was so weird. I was like, it was so bizarre. Very, very strange experience, but I had, like, where do you go from there? It was very
the NBA.
Odd. Well, yeah, what I should have done. No, but I ended up then working for Melbourne Football Club for 4 years in marketing and events. So I still stayed in sport for...
So you really did hit the ground running. You've gone straight to the NBL, which gets you the runs on the board that opens the door for the next thing.
Totally. Yeah. I have a history of, like, I guess, overachieving. So that's like, what happens is, though, when you fail, you fail really badly, which is kind of the story that gets me into photography. So I didn't pick up a camera until I was 31. So another like 10 years from there, And it was like a catastrophic business failure that went very, very wrong, and lost a lot of money, and didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And at that time, my husband had just bought me a camera for Christmas because he was like, I've noticed to stop parties and stuff, I just like to take photos just for memories, put them on Facebook. He's like, I've just noticed that you like doing that. Like, basically, here's a camera sort of thing, DSLR. And I just fell in love with it. Just fell in love with it. And then this 6 months later, this business shit happened, and it was like the worst thing I've ever gone through in my life. It was horrific. Had to put a business into liquidation and all this stuff. And then I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I had a couple of really weird experiences where I was going back to like temping and just like admin stuff. And I remember the turning point was I was at a temp job one day and I got asked to empty the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool. I'm just like, no, it's fine. Anyway, the lady comes up to me like 10 minutes later and she's like, Michelle, can you please follow me? And I'm like, okay. Marches me through the office. She's like, she goes into the cupboard, she pulls out a cup and the cup's like dirty. And she's like, did you empty the dishwasher? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, this cup is dirty. And I was like, oh shit, it is. Like, so do you want me to wash it? And she's like, I want you to put everything back into the dishwasher, reload the dishwasher.
Wow. And
wash it again. We don't know what's dirty, what's clean. And I was like, you know what? I can't do this.
Stick it up your ass.
I can't do this. And like, so I came home that night and I told my husband, I was like, I can't work. I can't be at the bottom again. This is soul destroying. And he was like, look, I really think like there was friends of mine in the periphery that were photographers that were looking at my work and saying, I think there's something here.
Mm-hmm. And these are, you're doing gig photos at this stage? You're just doing photos of friends?
Yeah,
portraits?
like I used to kind of freelance model for a bit, like nothing serious, but just like model for photographers. So I knew the process of how to set up shoots. So I'd just go and set up shoot with a model and makeup artist and go and shoot. And yeah, a few of my photographer friends were like, hey, like, you're actually really good at this. And I was like, really? Am I? And so my husband was like, why don't you just give this a crack? And he's a very amazing human that has seen a few things in my life like that. And yeah, so I just threw myself into it. And that was the point where I started to, I guess, incorporate the music stuff in that. Briggs, who's one of my dear friends from Shepparton
From Shepparton, yep.
Was just starting to like make a name for himself, starting to travel to Melbourne on the weekends, didn't have anywhere to stay, would crash on our couch. And, he's playing me his music. And originally he told me he was a rapper and I was like, all right, you're a rapper. Like, I didn't know anything about the Australian hip hop scene.
So you weren't in it?
No, not at all. Like very, very ignorant. And
And so this is around like
2011.
Yeah, right, okay.
No idea.
So because Aussie, in the mid-2000s, it had a real sort of...
Yeah, so I was like aware of like 1200 techniques, big fan of 1200s. I'd seen them at Big Day Out. I didn't really gravitate towards the Hoods and I didn't really gravitate towards Bliss and Nessa. I knew those artists, but that wasn't like who I loved. And then I heard Briggs and I was like, yo, this is really good. I was really, really impressed.
And the Shep references were sort of...
like, and I just... Everything he was rapping about, like... It gave me, and I'm a massive hip hop fan, so like I definitely felt like I was involved or representing or being in the culture, like in, the way that I dress, the people I hang out with, the music that I listen to, but not Australian. So like, again, this is my ignorance speaking here.
But you just weren't aware of it.
I wasn't aware. So,
and then you fell in love with it.
I fell in love, and then I was like, well, if there's artists like Briggs, who else is there?
Yep.
And that's when I just started to immerse myself in the scene. And yeah, I did. I fell in love with it. And I was just like, I want everyone to know who's out there and appreciate that there's actually really amazing music being made here. And that's where it all started.
Well, and for a while and for a long time, you were a staple of that Aussie hip hop scene. I don't think there was too many shows that you'd go to that you weren't there.
Yeah, you couldn't go to a gig and I wasn't there. I tell people that now because I'm like very passionate about mentoring, and it's hard to kind of explain like the hustle. Like I had this relentless drive for a couple of reasons. I didn't have a fallback plan, so I had to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell in love with a scene that I felt was undervalued, and I wanted to shine a light on it. So those things were driving me at that time.
Yeah, and look, in that scene, it still is underground, and there's not a lot of money going around anyway, and there's definitely not a lot of money for the photographers at that stage.
I wasn't getting paid.
No, I know, but that's what I mean. So the artists are hardly making money.
Oh, yeah.
So the producers are making even less money, and then the photographers and the graphic designers and all those tour providers, they're making even less money.
No money. No. I think at that time, like I said, this was my business, so I was subsidizing it from shooting weddings, shooting nightclubs, shooting occasionally a gig would pay, but not very often. But I was at every show. And then I realized, I was like, okay, well, I do want this to be my job and my life. So the artists need to know who I am. And if I just go to shows, I don't know if they're going to be able to meet me. Like I'm at the show, but I'm in the front row or whatever. Like, so my idea was to shoot a portrait series on Australian rappers or hip hop artists, DJs, etc. And I knew I had to work with them one-on-one. And so I put together a list of 10 people because I again, this is really early. I didn't know many people. I was like, but they were,
but
I remember writing down.
Sleeping on your couch.
Yeah.
He can school you on like this. You want
for sure. He absolutely should. But then, the more that you meet people too, you just like, I met Remy and Jay.
And Remy would have been young then.
Super young.
16 or something.
17, I think.
Yeah.
And then he introduced me to Grey Ghost. Grey Ghost introduced me to Mantra. Like it just was, it like snowballed really quickly. And I think too, like it's such an interesting time because like there's not many women in the scene. So, but I've always felt like welcomed with open arms. Like there was only a few incidents early on where I either felt disrespected or someone, thought I was a girlfriend or whatever, which happens all the time. But once people saw my work, then the respect was there, and then it was like fine, and then people would vouch for me, and I really didn't have any issues. So
in a small scene though, it wouldn't take long before people go, chick, she's the photographer, she does good work, and she's cool. That wouldn't have taken long.
I think that's true, and I think that was the thing. It's like these people were just like they became my friends. Like this is who I was hanging out with. I mean, to this day, these people that I'm talking about, like Grey Ghost and Mantra, and like Nate Flagrant. Like Flago is like. When I met Flago, so I met M Phases randomly. I was doing a shoot for a magazine that was for New Era, and he'd just done a collaboration cap for Good Gracious. So Good Gracious and New Era, super dope. And I did the photos for the campaign, whatever. So I met M Phases, and I was like, I was so nervous, like, because I knew who he was, and was like, he's a big deal. I had to nail the photos, and he was so lovely. And so I told him about this portrait project, and he was like, this is a really cool idea. You should speak to my manager, Nate. And I'd met Nate the day that I had met M Phases, because obviously Nate was managing M Phases. And so we went to the studio and I met him. And I've told Nate this story, but I did not get a good impression of Nate that day.
Because he's the businessman.
He's the businessman. I think they were building the studio, and we went there to shoot, and the studio wasn't built. And I'm like, I can't shoot in a half-built studio. This is not going to work.
Yeah,
and
but
it was
this
like
is urban. You can shoot on the street.
Yeah, no, it was not the vibe. And then I needed to shoot M Phases. He was DJing for Illy back then. And I needed to shoot him at the show to get some other photos and stuff. And then Nate forgot to put me on the door. So it took me, I had to talk my way into the Illy concert. It was really hard as well. So I was like, just annoyed. So when he said, you should meet my manager, Nate, I was like, oh, okay, I got to meet this Nate guy and whatever. And then I had the meeting with him, and I showed him some of the work that I was doing on this portrait series then. And Nate was just like so amazing and so generous, and basically was like, I believe in this project. I believe in you. Who do you want? Yep. And he basically opened up his contact book and said, I'll just get you anyone you want.
Amazing.
And that changed my life essentially, and he's
10
one of my
years
best
ago-
friends.
10
to
years
this
later,
day.
he's your best mate. There
He
you go.
still is, yeah, one of my best mates. I'm a
That's amazing.
collaborator, and talk to him every other day. So,
Don't believe first impressions all the time.
No, he was wearing a trench coat. I tell him that's what it was. I think it was the coat.
The trench coat. So, do you remember your first actual gig that you went to and that you actually shot and you felt like, I'm actually a photographer here. I'm not fucking around. Look, this is like a legit thing I'm doing.
I do. It was. I mean, there was lots of little, go on a laundry and like lots of little gigs first, but that show for me was when Briggs supported Hilltop Hoods, and he got me along to the show.
Was that at Festival Hall?
It's at Festival Hall. I had a horrific... And now, anyone who's a photographer will know that we have bad experiences with security. I had a very bad experience with security that night where I was shooting for Adam Briggs, and sorry, his name's Adam, and I was on the side of the stage, have my credentials, all, as you need to, and I had gone from the pit up to the side of stage, and all of a sudden, I had my backpack on my back. All of a sudden, someone was pulling me from my backpack down the ramp and kicked me out of the venue.
Security guard, yeah.
Security guard. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, I'm shooting for this. I've got credentials. I'm shooting for this artist. And we're having this huge argument at the side. And this is like the beginning of my dramas with security, but it still continues to this day. But I was
they still give you a hard time?
Oh gosh, it's just, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on
just so you need to have a hat that says press on it like this.
I think I don't like to bring gender into anything because I'm very much of the opinion, especially because of my experience and how well I've been treated, and there's some times though where I can't think of any other reason that then they don't think I look like I should be there. So
because they think you look like a fan
or a girlfriend or something. I don't know.
And you're just overstepping the boundary.
Yeah.
They think.
I don't know. I've got a biggest cameras you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
But having said that, I know male photographers have a lot of experiences with security as well. I think
some security guards are angry.
Power trips.
Steroids.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I guess they've got a job to do. They've been briefed. Like, there's lots of different things. But I have had a lot of bad experiences with security guards, and that was my first one. And I was out there saying to him, like, I know you're doing a job, but my job right now is to capture this person on stage, and I'm missing so much. I need to be in there. And then he had to get someone to approve it, and like, so
you
you're
have
out
your
there
lanyard on, though?
have my lanyard, AAA pass, like. So it's so frustrating. But anyway, got back in. And then, then I got to shoot the Hoods as well, which, they're such amazing performers. And like, I was saying before, I wasn't a massive fan of them, but I have so much respect for them and what they've done for this scene as well. And seeing them perform too, you just get the bug. Like, they're just such amazing performers, and was like, oh yeah, I really want to do this. This is really cool. Especially those big shows.
That's
like Festival Hall, 5,000 people. It's not like Laundry Bar where there's like 20 people and there's some like rappers that are...
And that's probably the last time you'll see the Hilltop Hoods at a place that's that small.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, like, I saw them just like a couple of weeks ago at Splendor. They're still playing these huge festivals to 30,000 people or whatever. So
yeah. Crazy. So I guess you've found your feet and you've been embraced by the industry and the small scene that there is there. And I guess at what stage do you decide that I'm going to turn this into a book, or you just think, I guess back then everyone's making a blog, you think, is that the way I do it? But you've got such good content, you don't want to waste it like that.
I thought it was going to be an exhibition.
Oh yeah.
I thought, yeah, I'll get 20 rappers, this will be cool. And so when I shot with Mantra and Grey Ghost together, which is a really lovely part of the book, I think, is that their photos together. Obviously they could be shot as artists in their own right, but they do collaborate a lot, and they're best mates and stuff, which I thought was really nice. But Mantra was like, what are you going to do, with this? I was like, oh, maybe an exhibition. And he's like, nah. He's like, it's a book. And I was like, okay, it's a book. Literally, that was how the conversation went. Right. I didn't know what that meant.
What that
entails, or I probably wouldn't have done it because it's an extremely hard thing to do. But anyway, it took me 2 years, and I shot with like over 180 artists in the end.
Did it change the way that you shot once you knew it was going to be a book?
No, I was a very baby photographer back then. So all I was trying to do is get the best possible portrait in a portrait sitting, if
Do you
that makes
think your
sense.
naivety in that helped you shoot the shots then because you didn't?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, that's it.
Yeah, 100%. Had no idea what I was doing.
Just like me here. I've got no
Yeah,
idea.
like I said, you fake it, until you make it, sort of thing. But, I was a natural light photographer, which is code for I have no idea what I'm doing in the studio or with lights. So, it was all just using ambient light, being on the street, like 99% of the shots, I think, except for there's a shot with, who is it? 1/6 in an alleyway, which we're using car lights. And there's a Bliss and Esso shot was the first time I ever used flash in my life. And thankfully it worked because it's a great photo. Other than that, all the other photos are like ambient light, window light, or just out daylight.
Do you feel like when you do bring studio light into it, though, it sort of you can lose a little bit of it? Like, to keep it simple is good, or do you just use every
I'm a
aspect
big
you've got?
studio whore now, so I love my studio lights.
You do, yes. Well, I've got that in my notes. We'll talk about the studio.
I love shooting in studio now. I was just scared of it. And in the studio you have full control over whatever you want. You can kind of create your own environment. So I would say 90% of what I shoot now is probably in the studio.
Yeah.
It's totally flipped.
Yeah, and I guess now you understand it and you've got everything at your disposal. But if you're just shooting people that say, yeah, cool, do it before a gig, you can't bring in your whole production.
Yeah, no, there's something about deconstructing. Like, I love looking at a photo and working out how they lit it. And I can usually look at any reference and get close to that. So I love the science behind it, if that's, and it took me a long time. I'm not a technical photographer. I find that stuff very hard. So it took me a long time to get good at that, if that makes sense.
And so then these are when you sort of brought the book out in 2012 or something.
14.
14. We started in 2012. It was going. You shot it for a couple of years.
Yeah, a couple of years. Yeah.
So then, and crowdfunding. I believe you used some crowdfunding there to sort of get that going, and that was probably in its infancy there. That
Thank
sort of
God.
crowdfunding thing.
It was.
And that was a good experience for you.
It was a great experience. Very nerve-wracking because you're like, I knew I had to raise about 20 grand, which is a lot of money. And yeah, it was possible back then.
Is that not around anymore?
I don't think it is, but there's still like GoFundMe and stuff. Yep. It's the same thing. Before everyone got really bored of, supporting things, it was still very new. Like, this is how we can help creatives. And I think by the time I did the campaign, I'd got so many people on board that, all we kind of needed to do was get the artists to support it. Like, the artists shared it and then all the fans got on board. Like, it was so well supported. And so we did that, and then we did a gig at the Corner Hotel, and that raised...
There was a gig at the SB, or was that the launch?
The SB was the launch.
Oh, okay, right.
So we did another one, we did a fundraising gig. It was crazy lineup. It was, let me think who was the lineup. Seth Century was headliner.
Yeah.
Mantra, Grey Ghost, Enfa, Remy, Dylan Joel, Dielectrics.
Yeah, right.
Chelsea Jane.
Oh, yeah, she's from Brisbane or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Risk was DJing. It was stacked.
Yep.
Stacked. So, people still to this day are like, that lineup was crazy.
Yeah, and mostly Melbourne as well.
Melbourne, all my mates.
Dielectrics from Sydney, I think.
He was living in Frankston at that time.
Right,
so, yeah. So really, really fortunate to have all these amazing people that just came on board to help me do this. So
they all played for free and everything just to raise money for that.
Just to raise money. So fortunate. And so Briggs was there as well. How can I forget Briggs? My God.
Adam, as we now we're on a first name basis.
We are on first name. Yeah. So, and there was, I'm just trying to think, Diafrix was meant to as well, but then something missed a flight or something, so they didn't make it. But yeah, really huge lineup, sold out Corner Hotel, really, really well supported, and raised enough money to print a shit ton of books.
Yeah.
That I'm still trying to get rid of, by the way, if anyone needs to buy a copy.
Yeah, you buy a copy at michellegracehunder.com, I believe.
Yes, you can get. There will be a link on that.
There'll be a link. We'll put the link on there.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's awesome. And the Aussie hip hop scene, even though it's not huge, they get behind it. They'll buy the merch. They'll buy the records. They'll buy the CDs. They'll buy the books. Like the community definitely gets behind it.
Absolutely. Yeah, they really did. So, I was really, really fortunate.
And then
very grateful.
Then the tour happens.
And the tour happens because this is the thing about being friends with Nate. So Nate was like the co-producer of my book, and we were deciding like how are we going to get this out there. Like
we should say Flagrant for people.
So yeah, or Flago. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, I know he's very much the businessman Flago. But yeah, we were just like trying to decide how to get the book out there. We're not going to do like a book signing. Like who's going to come to that? Nate's like, nah. Let's do a gig in every state. Like, let's get all your mates involved. Mm-hmm. So we went for a grant, so then we could actually pay people.
Yeah.
And it was a really good way of marketing the book, and then also all of the artists that were in it. So for me, it was like about supporting the community that supported me by putting on a show in every state. Great lineup, and yeah, just being able to kind of celebrate this moment, which was really cool. I mean, a kind of weird thing for a photographer to do, but cool as well.
Yeah, but I think you kind of elevated yourself above the normal photographer. You were just a person within the scene at this stage.
Yeah.
So it gave you the ability to do these sort of things.
Yeah, and like I said, like I do have that drive to just, and this is why it's great to be friends with Flago as well, because he has this as well. Like everything needs to be elevated. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no half-assing anything. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it at 110%. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why we collaborate so well, because we're both psychos in that regard.
Yeah,
so,
you're both going to give it your all and a little bit more. All right, we'll be back to the guests in a moment. But if you could, just hit that subscribe button. I need everyone to fucking subscribe. We're not asking for any money. It's not hard. It only takes a second. Hit the subscribe button and help us out. Cheers. And then so you did. I believe the SB was the first gig, and then you went and you toured around.
Yeah.
Which it would have been cool. Like I went to it, but it would have been sick to have the homecoming, like the last one in Melbourne. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can't even remember why we scheduled it that way. It would have
but
been
it was
like,
a great gig though.
It would have been dates and like
stuff
venues
like
and blah blah blah. Because that's the other thing is like I had no idea about touring and scheduling and all that sort of stuff, and even getting the artists that I wanted to tour with me and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, there was like doing all of the logistics, but yeah, it was really fun.
It was the old Gershwin room.
It was a Gershwin room.
The old Gershwin room. I was there. The SB's changed a bit now. Have you been back since?
I have been there.
What do you think?
Well, it's quite fancy, and I don't mind it.
The Gershwin room isn't that different.
Gershwin room is pretty much the same. Yeah.
Which is one positive we can sort of take from it.
Yeah.
But
I've got some fond memories of before and after, so like it doesn't bother me that much, if that makes sense.
I got a lot of people like, oh man, the SB's not the same, and I'm like, look, it exists the way it does now, and if it wasn't like that,
it wouldn't exist.
It wouldn't exist. So
that's
you've
such
got
a
it.
Good point.
Yeah. So they don't get it. They're like,
and also too, like those upstairs rooms that are all like fancy and stuff. Like, I remember shooting Pharaoh Monch up there when it was like they let us in there. I can't remember why.
That's where all the band rooms sort of were and stuff up there.
No, but above that.
Above
right. that. Now there's like you can go up there. It's all fancy and stuff. But there was one particular. It was like I don't know, like the ghost of the SB lived there or whatever. Yeah. There was like nothing, like mattress in a like it was just like looked like squatters lived there or something. And Pharaoh and I shot there for. We shot his campaign for Lost in Translation, which was like a album that came out in 2015, I think, which we shot at the SB, which was really cool. But yeah, it was like before it was all remodeled and done really nicely.
It was a lot different.
Yeah, and now it's like, it's quite pretty.
At least it's still a venue.
Well, also too, I like that the history of like the guy that was living there, and he was like a chemist or something, and they've
selling some sort of.
I can't remember the story. Anyway, it's a homage to him. Pays homage to him. Yeah. So they've done it I think they've done it tastefully.
Yeah, they have. There
might be a lot of people listening going, "We hate it."
Well, I know. Yeah, look, it exists like that. Otherwise, the whole thing would just be. No,
you make a very good point. It would be.
You mentioned Pharaoh Monch, but man, I've got to ask, like. Obviously, you've worked and shot a lot of big names now. Like, who's someone when you shot and you're like, that's a spin out? Like, you've like, I'm sure there's plenty of them.
There's so many. Yeah.
But like someone that you like, one day when you hang up your camera, you'll be like, oh, I shot that individual,
Gosh, there's Raekwon, there's like Talib Kweli, there's like, I mean, those three with Pharaoh are very much like Odyssey, who I just adore. Like people too, like especially with Pharaoh and Odyssey, like people that I've become friends with, and like every time I go to New York, I see them, and I really appreciate that because they've been, Pharaoh especially, who I talk to like every other week. Joel always gives me so much shit. He's like, I can't believe you're friends with Pharaoh Monch. I'm like, it's pretty wild. But and every time I go to New York, he makes time for me every single time.
Yeah, awesome.
Like that's really special. Do you know what I mean? Like just he also, when I shot with Pharaoh, it meant that everyone took me seriously as well.
Yeah,
like
gave
he
you a
really,
stamp of approval.
yeah, totally. And I will never forget that because I still was very much a baby photographer. But it was Briggs. It was like, hey, you should shoot with this girl. She's, you know, that's my home girl. And then we hung out, and like the first time I shot with Pharaoh was here. I shot his show, and then I went to New York and shot with him over there. We did, I think, probably one of my most iconic photos of him that I can think of, which was in Queens, which is a beautiful, awesome photo of him. And then he came back here and we shot the album cover stuff. And then, you know, if I go over there, we shoot, like, yeah, we always catch up. So that's like real pinch yourself kind of moment. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the Raekwon story is like crazy. Like the shoot didn't go very well. There's like one photo that I'm really proud of, but that was a totally different, weird.
Well, can you tell us about it?
Sure.
Sure.
So it came through a friend. She teed up the shoot, and again, because I'm a natural light photographer back then.
So we're talking, you're in 2012,
It was 2015
Yep.
then. So the book had come out it was 2014. The book had not come out yet, but I'd finished it. So it had gone into print. Did a trip to America, where I shot with Dizzy Wright in the first week, which was crazy because he's the photo of Dizzy Wright. For those who don't know, he was on Funk Volume at that moment, which was Hobson's label, and the CEO of Funk Volume is still actually to this day very good. Actually, he's my petitioner for my US visa. So very Dame, shout out Dame. He's a friend of mine, very good friend of mine. But he teed up the shoot with Dizzy Wright, which went so well, and we got a shot that is my most tattooed photo of Dizzy Wright. There's so many people have that tattooed, which is really cool. Went to New York, shot with Pharaoh, shot with Talib Kweli, and then randomly got a shoot with Raekwon. And I remember getting on the train, going there. I think the shoot was at like 5:00 and PM. Yeah. And it was in this particular high-rise building and it was incredible. Like the view was insane.
We're talking like a fancy high-rise, or we're not talking like a project high-rise? Okay.
No, fancy high-rise. And but he was like late. He was late. And then not only was he late, he was waiting on a jewelry guy, and the jewelry guy was late. And then they had to wait on some pizza, and they had to wait on some weed. Like it was just like, it just kept going. And so the sun was setting, and I was really, because I'm like, if it's dark? I got nothing.
Wow, yeah.
So it was setting, and they wanted a particular shot, basically of Raekwon in the window with like, you could see that New York is behind them. Now, this is going to be like technical photography stuff, but I only had one lens with me then, which was like a 50mm lens, not very wide, and I'm shooting indoors, and behind him is the scene that you want to see. So to do that, technically what I would have needed to do was to have a light in front of him so I could shoot at an f-stop high enough that you could see that the city was in the background. Because I didn't have a light in front of him, my f-stop needed to be really low so you could actually see his face, which meant, what that means is that anything behind him is blurred. You can't see shit.
So it could be anything.
You could be anything, and you couldn't see the environment, which is not what he wanted. So there's that issue. We're losing light. So we went outside, and like, it was kind of like, there's like a balcony sort of thing. We did some kind of shots, and then we went to a pool room and got some shots, which is the shot that I like. I've actually got the shot hanging up in my house. It's really cool. But the photos, I didn't love the photos. I don't think he loved the photos either. They weren't great. So that's always like a disappointment when you're put in a situation with someone like that, and then you're like,
but it's no fault of your own. Did it teach you a lesson that you should always have some light on you? Just
yeah, it's like, and just, Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's when you start going, I've just got to be way better than I am, you know? I can't be in a situation with one of the greatest rappers of all time and you're like, you know, you fuck it. So, like I said, I got one great photo out of it. So, you know, it wasn't all horrific, but definitely wasn't my best outing. But then on the flip side, a few days earlier with Farrow, like that's one of my favorite shoots ever still. So it's like crazy how that happens.
Yeah, and now I do have to ask, if you could shoot anyone, like bucket list, Kendrick straight away. You don't even have to think about it. I often ask people questions like that, and they go, "Oh, I don't know," just straight away Kendrick.
Yeah. Obsessed with Kendrick. Yeah, so I've got people that have come to my house know this, but I have a Kendrick. It's about the size of that wall behind you. Mm-hmm. It's a photo that I took of him in 2016 at Rod Laver Arena, and it's a photo that we made into a wallpaper.
That was the Eminem tour?
No, it was the one after that. It was the Not Good Kid. It was the Pimp a Butterfly tour.
Oh, he did that. Oh, Rod Laver, yeah, because Eminem was at at Marvel or whatever.
Marvel, so it was the one after that.
And he did Rod Laver.
He did Rod Laver.
So you have shot him, but not in
portrait
capacity.
I want to shoot a portrait of him. Like I've shot Kendrick like 4 times maybe. Yeah. I want to shoot a portrait. That's like bucket list. Yeah.
And he's a bit of an aloof character when he's not releasing music or touring, isn't he?
I don't know the probability of me shooting him at this point.
You've put it out there to the universe.
I've put it out many times, Kendrick, if you are listening. No, and also too, his latest tour, I went with my husband, I went with my best friend Sosie, and I went with Grey Ghost, my other like bestie. And we were just blown away at the artistry. He's just an artist, like visually, that he merges the visual with the music in a way that I just don't think anyone else does, and that as a visual artist is really inspiring. Everything that he does from that, like video clips, photography, is utter perfection in my opinion.
Everything he seems to do is a concept album, if that makes sense. Like it's not just
his visuals. It's everything is so highly conceptual and thought through. And
is that him, or is it a team behind him, or a bit of both?
He has a guy that he works with, Dave, I can't remember his surname, and they have PG Lang, which is like their kind of visual company that they do together. But they obviously collaborate. I don't know them well enough to know who's coming up with, but I feel like it's very much a collaborative effort, but obsessed with what he does in that regard. So that would be my number one.
And he doesn't put out much rubbish, you know what I mean? Like
there's no rubbish.
It's all just
really considered is what there's probably a lot of people that maybe are not Kendrick fans for whatever reason. I come across them sometimes and I'm like, wouldn't be me, but anyway. It's just what he's when I came across Kendrick in 2012, he was the person that made me love the hip hop from the 90s that I missed. Like it made me love hip hop again. When I heard Good Kid, Mad City, and it literally changed my life. And then I went back. It's
like an instant classic, isn't it?
Instant classic. And then I went back and heard Section 80, which I still think is brilliant. I just think he's the best. So fight me, whoever's.
I don't like to delve into people's personal life too much, but you have mentioned your husband a few times.
Oh, yes, my
and
husband.
You've been together for a very long time, so I guess it's got to have an understanding partner that lets you sort of do this stuff and travel the world and do all that sort of
work with
stuff.
all these rappers.
But everything. So I don't like to mention people's personal life, but you've mentioned him, so you've got to be lucky there and obviously have a very understanding partner.
He's the best human. Like I say to him every day, "You're my favorite human that I've ever met." And he's we've been together 25 years. Like I said, I met him on the first day of uni playing basketball, and we're still playing basketball together. And he still inspires me every day. We've just got a studio together in Footscray now. We've started to do more work together. We're doing the Rolling Stone podcast together at the moment, producing that, which is really cool. Doing more. We've got lots of ideas, and it's just really inspiring to be around him, and I love that. He pushes me to be the best version of myself. He got me through some very bad health issues over the last couple of years. Like literally was the one that was like where he always talked about it like, I might as well talk about it because
Yeah, so I didn't want to ask, but if you
no,
want to
it's
talk
fine.
about it.
So I got injured by the COVID vaccine very badly. So I got pericarditis, which wasn't diagnosed for 18 months because they kept telling me it was in my head. They kept telling me it was anxiety. I knew that it wasn't, but I was very, very unwell for a long time. I had lots of different weird things from it, but pericarditis is obviously the most serious thing. I got POTS, and I got MCAS, which is like, MCAS is like basically like an autoimmune thing where I was like allergic to everything. It was horrific. And then, yeah, I'm still getting through, I don't have any symptoms day to day now, thank God, but just my exercise tolerance is really low. So I'm working on that at the moment so that I want to play basketball again. But anyway, my husband would say, he'd always talk about it in like, this happened to us and we're going to get through it. And, we're going to get you better by Christmas. Like, it was always like a team effort, the language around it. I never felt like I was going through it by myself. And I had some very extremely dark times. There was times that I had to not work for 3 months. I had to cancel a tour with Rule, like really devastating stuff that like broke me. So, and he was just like, it's not forever. Like, he was just so good at pulling me through that. And I think it's like, when you get married, you hear that in sickness and in health thing, and you're like, well, the sickness part, you never know when that's going to come. But yeah, he really proved, like, he just stepped up in every single way. Like, he was cooking for me. He was making sure I took all my supplements, making sure that I just did, if I, at the times when I couldn't even walk that far, like making sure I went for little walks or whatever, just pushing me to get better. So in a supportive way, not in a...
Sounds like you couldn't ask for someone who's more supportive, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm so lucky because I know there's people in the vaccine injured group. Oh, by the way, if you put this on YouTube, probably going to like...
Yeah, we'll see how we get...
Bump out. Anyway, I probably should have mentioned that before we say the naughty words. Yeah, there's so many people in the injured community that don't have that. And actually just beep out the word.
We'll
beep out the word.
That's Adam's job.
Adam, he can beep out the word and you can just be like, everyone can just guess what we're talking about. Yeah, I'm so fortunate. And I don't, I definitely feel like I went to hospital so many times. There was so many times I didn't think I was going to get through the night. And like, I just don't think I would be here without him. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. And he gave you your first camera.
Gave me my first camera. I did. So many ways where he's changed the course of my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, amazing. So you mentioned Rule. We have to talk about Rule.
You do.
You are part of Team Rule, which actually is a team.
It is a team.
It is a team. And from following you guys on social media, obviously I know Joel, I know Flago, and I see the team, and it seems like you guys are all doing it together. And he is obviously the front of this team, but it looks like it's a legit fucking workforce behind it.
Yeah, so it's so funny because people always are like, how do you get to work with someone like Rule? And I'm like, this is 10 years in the making, and the people that are behind Rule have been working on other projects together and are best mates and socialise together and holiday together, but have a very relentless drive and we better each other, I think, in every way. Like we're always pushing and striving to do the best possible work. And when Rule came into the scene or into the picture, there was a ready-made team there for him, if that makes sense. So he's always had the benefit of the team being behind him, and everything that he puts out is at the highest possible level, which has obviously benefited him. But also we love and adore him and believe in him, and so everything we do is for him because we believe in him as a talent. So it works really nicely. And
it must be cool to see him progress and mature, because when you first started working with him, he would have been 16 or something.
13.
So he was
13, little baby boy.
13. And how old is he now?
20. Turns 21 this month.
So, and you guys have been such a huge part of his, half his life sort of thing, you know?
It's so weird because it's like, my husband and I, we don't have children. So we're like, you don't know what it's like to watch someone grow up and be very proud of them, but I guess it's like the closest that you would come to, to watching someone. For me as a photographer, it was really strange watching, because I shoot him so often, and there was a period of time between maybe like 16 and 19 where every time I saw him, you could see such a physical change in his face and his bone structure and everything. So I was like constantly, because I've taken literally like probably millions of photos of him at this point. Like, I'm not even joking. It's so many photos. So I've seen him up close, not only just personally, but computer screen and watching the face change and develop and grow. It's weird. I'm like, this is so strange. And then he, then the flip side of that is that he's just an awesome kid, and we love being around him, and he's a pleasure to work for. So that's also great.
And everything seems to be very calculated, and you don't want to rush everything. You want to make sure it's up. But he's still seeing a lot of success, even though you sort of it's a slow progression.
I mean, the slow progression, I think it was extremely fast. I think the slow progression you're talking about is COVID, because COVID put a pretty big spanner in the works in terms of, his debut album would have come out in 2020 instead it came out in 2023.
Okay. Yeah,
so
that makes a big
yeah. But other than that, it was an astronomically fast rise.
Yeah, I just to get that first album.
Well, literally
he
it was just
touring
COVID.
everywhere before that anyway.
Yeah, we were touring, like the first tour we did was like Japan when he was like 14, 15 maybe.
Wow.
We'd already been to Asia a few times, America a few times, Europe. I know in 2019, I think we did like 7 months of touring, and then COVID hit. So it definitely put, a little bit of a halt to everything. And now the album's come out, and so he's back touring, and, just got back from 6 weeks in America, and watching the fans appreciate it, and everything's still growing, which is really cool. And
where are the fans the craziest? Where's the most Raw Mania?
Well, I just missed... I didn't do South America, which just happened. Apparently, Nate was just saying that Argentina was the craziest. I'm actually spewing that I missed that. But previous to that, or some of the Asian countries, like Bangkok's always really crazy. They're more crazy when you arrive, like airport stuff.
Like Beatles Mania type stuff.
Yeah. And then some of the crowds, I'm trying to think, like, when you do 26 shows in 5 weeks, it's a bit of a blur. Like, I actually forget.
Yeah, where's where
and what. I was just talking to Chloe today, who's Rules PA now, and I was just text her a funny memory, but I couldn't remember what city we were in. I was like, when we're in this and this thing happened. She's like, oh, I think that was Portland. And I'm like, yeah, like you just, all the days blur into each other, and you're just like, I don't know where I am. So yeah,
well, touring like that, you could forget where you were and what's going on and what city were you in, and that whole joke when they say good on you and they say the wrong city name.
I know how that happens, because it's such a blur. Like you literally, you do, it's kind of like Groundhog Day. You do a show, it's, bump in, sound check. He has like a VIP thing for people.
Meet and greet type thing.
Yeah, it's not like it's like a group performance sort of thing. Show, and then go to sleep, get on the bus, it goes somewhere, and then you wake up and you're in a new city. And that's rinse and repeat, So like, and sometimes you wake up, if you got a day off, you're in the middle of nowhere, you're like, where are we? And you're like, Omaha, and you're like, okay, where's that?
Yeah, what are we gonna do today?
Yeah, what are we going to do today? Not much. So.
But it must be extremely rewarding, not just to see him being successful, but the whole project be successful, because you are so a part of it that you feel that you've had a win as well. You know what I mean?
For sure. And we love, like, especially with Jeremy Grey Ghost, like collaborating from a visual point of view, because he's like, it's very much his vision, with Rule as well. Like, Rule's very collaborative with it as well. But then it's like, I get to bring that to life in terms of the stills, which I love. I love working with Jeremy. He's a genius. Like, it's actually really beautiful to see, Jeremy's one of those people from the first day that I worked with him. Jeremy's Grey Ghost. He was a rapper, and the first day that I worked with him, it was instant friends. Like, I've had that with quite a few people, but him was very memorable. Like, we just felt like we joke about how we look like brother and sister. It's like we're just like separated at birth or something, and just a very, very kindred spirit, very, very close bond with him. a very, very dear friend of mine, you know, and it's the same with Joel. You know, these people that are very, very, very dear friends to me, you know, and like I said, we holiday with them and we're just like...
Yeah, if you spend so much time together, but
Yeah.
you would anyway, that's the thing.
Yeah, but we like genuinely just adore each other, you know, like we all really, really like each other. It's
Well,
like cool.
it would be awkward if you didn't do
I
all
know,
those sort of
but
things.
it's like, it's weird because like I know people, like you were just talking about my husband being supportive, and I know especially when I'm on tour, like people have weird assumptions about male-female relationships as well. And it's like, these are my best mates.
Yeah.
These are like totally platonic, very beautiful friendships that people always have to be like, what's going on with you and Joel? I'm like, actually people usually message Joel, not me, but like I'm just like, that's so weird to me. Like,
yeah, if you're
just
touring,
mates.
you're gonna have to share a room with
we
two different beds.
literally share rooms all of the time.
Yeah, and that's tour life.
That's
what
my
you've got-
best mate,
That's what
you
you've got
know?
to do.
Yeah.
But it is all about work-life balance a lot as well, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you're having fun there. But you've got to have some time off, especially if you've had health complications or
Mm.
you know stuff like that. So it must be hard for you to balance that sort of stuff as well when there is a grueling schedule. Like
It's
I know,
very hard on tour. I would
Yeah.
say that's the hardest. I've had to make it a priority because of my health stuff. Like it's very, very important that for me, I have to eat very, very well. I have to have all of my supplementation, all that sort of stuff. I have to have sun. I have to be out in nature. And I have to sleep. Sleep is really important. So all of the things that are basically impossible on tour. So what I would do is I would go to bed, like everyone after the show, I would edit straight away, finish within an hour, go to bed while everyone's like drinking whatever on the bus. I just had to sleep. Like there was maybe 2 times in the whole tour that I stayed up late, or later. I would just go to sleep and then I would get up first and I would get off the bus first, make sure that I ate well, like I have, which is very hard in America, but trying to get at least a decent breakfast and, you know, just sit under a tree for a bit and just do the things that I need to do in terms of just making sure my mental health and my physical health is okay. But when I'm home, you know, I'm on my own schedule. So,
but it's still hard. Like we were going to shoot tomorrow, and then you're like, I've got to go to
I've got to go to
stuff.
Brisbane.
So that sort of stuff, I guess that's part of the gig economy now. That you've got to
in a freelance life, you're just like you know. But I feel like both Jarvis and I manage it pretty well. We prioritize our health. Like it's very, very important to us. He's a freak. Like he does like ice baths and saunas and shit. Like he's next level.
Yeah.
So it's very important in our life and in our marriage anyway to make it a priority. We go to bed like ridiculously early. Like we are in bed by 10 o'clock.
Okay. We'll wrap this up in a minute.
Yeah. But it's getting very late. And you know, we make sure we eat really healthy, like all of these things. That's
when
that's
you
a
can,
priority.
because
Yeah.
it's harder when you're on the road.
When you're on the road, it's hard. It's harder. It's possible. It's just like harder for sure. But when you're home, it's very possible. So you know, just making sure we do all of those things and.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the Rolling Stone podcast that you're doing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Are you allowed to tell us about that?
I guess so. No, they've started doing a podcast called Behind the Cover, which they, weirdly enough, someone from the team reached out to Jarvis to do it. So my husband is in broadcast and television, and filmmaking, has been forever, but in sport. So he's always worked in sport. They reached out to him. He's reading me this email, and I'm like, so I had just shot.
You've shot a cover for
Yeah,
Rolling
so
Stone.
I know, like, and I know them really well as well. So, like, I just caught up with Poppy, who's the editor, when I was in LA. Like, we're really good friends. He's reading me this email. I've got this email about doing this podcast, and he's reading me all the names, and I'm like, they're all my friends. What are you talking about? He's like, so then we're gonna do, you know, and they're doing, and I'm like, I know them. Anyway, no, so it's I mean, it's just like producing like kind of what you're doing here, and you know, getting out their stuff for their socials, and it's like a little job that we've just taken on as a production house, which is cool.
Yeah,
a little bit of fun.
Well, tell us about the studio got next, which obviously is a reference to basketball, which we know you love. Do people get that, or some people don't get it?
A lot of people don't get it, but that's okay.
So I'll explain.
As long as the people that get it.
That's what they say when you're playing pickup ball or something, and who's got
Who's
next,
got
and we've
next.
got next. So that's what you say. So that's a reference to basketball. Do you want to tell us a bit about the studio?
Yeah, so the studio's in Footscray. It's like a multi-level creative space that we've just opened a few months ago. It's for us to work out, but it's also for us to hire out to creatives that want to shoot there, want to work out of there. It's just so much fun. Like we've kind of purpose built the space for what we need. And yeah, it's been really great so far. So
Amazing.
I feel very inspired and doing some of my best work there, which is really cool. And yeah.
When you
really
started
fun.
this journey, did you think you'd have a multi-level studio space at your disposal?
There's no way. It's weird how it even happened though, because I'd been in a studio space for 12 years and I loved that space. I was like, like a co-working studio space that I was one of the however many photographers there. It was really cost effective. I always said to the studio manager, like, you're going to have to bury me in this place. I will never leave here. It's so good. I loved it so much. And then this opportunity came up and it just was too good to refuse. We just were like, wow, like it just feels perfect, And it was at a time that, Jarvis and I were like, maybe we can do something together. Maybe we can do some more projects together. And very excited for it, which is really cool. So it's obviously people can rent it out if they need a space to shoot or need a space to work out of for a day or whatever, or however long, which is cool. Has
Footscray changed much, do you think?
Well, we bought our first house in West Footscray in 2007. It has changed. It has changed a lot even since then. We live in Williamstown now, but even over the last kind of 15 years. But we went to uni in Footscray.
Uni?
We went to Vic Uni. So
that was different.
That was so when you say it changed, like it was hard to walk from the train station to uni at that point. It was
I've got a mate who went to uni there and he's 6'4", big guy, plays footy, and he's like, man, walking from that Footscray station to the uni, he goes, I'm always like watching my back and he's nervous.
Not fun, So my husband I didn't actually I always had a car, but my husband used to catch the train and he would talk about it all the time. Like, and he's like the same, like, you're not going to mess with him in the street or anything. It's like, but he was like, it's, it just wasn't a great place, but it's obviously very different. But what I love about Footscray is like if you go down that main street in Barclay Street or whatever, you're still going to get great Vietnamese, great Ethiopian. Like I don't want that to ever change.
No.
Like,
and the banh mi is so much cheaper than everywhere else.
So good.
Yeah.
I don't want that to we don't want that part because that's Footscray. You don't want that part to ever change. I think being safer and maybe not having as many drugs and stuff is a good thing, but I don't want the soul to be ever removed. And that's when gentrification happens, that is always a risk, of course. But
I think it's soul will stay there for a while. I don't think it's changing. People have been saying for the last 30 years, like Footscray is going to be totally gentrified and it'll be like, and it
still hasn't happened, especially if you go down that main street, like the market's still there and all, you've still got these great African hair places and like all this really cool stuff. Like I hope that never changes. I hope that stays the same.
No, and if you want a gentrified area, you can go over to sort of
Yarraville.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Or Williamstown, where we live, we call it white bread. It's very hilarious.
Williamstown is the most south side place over in West.
Do you think?
It is.
It's a beautiful spot to live and we love it. We absolutely love living there. It feels very safe. Actually, the reason that we love it so much is that it feels like a country town. We're both from the country. It feels like a country town, but you're in Melbourne. Yeah. That's why we were really drawn to it, and we love the beach. So. And
it's secluded. It's sort of tucked away. You don't go there.
It feels like a little village. Like nobody goes there. Nobody goes to Williamstown. No. Unless you're going to the beach in summer, it's quite busy. But you're not going there. You're not driving through there. No, for any reason. It is
tucked away. It is it's a nice little spot. We do like Williamstown. So what's next? What else have you got on the horizon? You've obviously got the studio. Yeah. But what else are you doing? Are you going back on tour? Are you working with some new exciting artists? What have you got for us?
I've got there's something I can't mention, which is annoying because that would be really cool to announce. But a project with my best friend Sosie, which, it's kind of, all of my projects that I've done, we didn't even talk about her sound, but all of my projects that I've done have been around highlighting aspects of the industry that I don't feel like have got enough light, I guess, essentially. And I've got a new project that is with my best friend Sosie, and that's what that's going to do as well, which is cool. Okay. So we just can't really announce it yet.
We can't announce it.
But I'm doing a project with my best friend Sosie, and it's going to be amazing.
So what you touched on her sound. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, though?
Sure. I guess that one was the project after Rise, when, you know, I'd worked with all these men in the industry for like 2 years.
But you had a great experience,
I had a great experience. And like it was very unconsciously working with men either. So it wasn't like I was like,
it was
oh,
a
I'm not
male-dominated sort of industry.
It's a male-dominated scene. The thing for me is that I was looking at my folio and I was like, it's a dude fest. It's just like, you know what I mean? So I was like, I need to work with some women. Through that process, I was like, wait, why was it so hard to find so many female hip-hop artists? Why is it so hard to find so many female metal? Like, I started like questioning what's going on, because I had never really thought about it. Even as a photographer, like I hadn't really why are there no other female photographers? Like, didn't really think about it until I started looking into certain statistics, and it just sparked a little. I just wanted to have a conversation, really. So her sound was a documentary that came out in 2019 that I did with a dear friend of mine, Claudia. And yeah, so it was a documentary and photo series basically talking about gender inequality, and just from the female perspective, like why is it trickier? Not from a victim point of view, not like poor us. It's just there are some extra obstacles, and they would just talk about them. And it's not about pointing fingers. It's not about saying men suck or anything like that.
Just shining a light on it.
It's just shining a light to say, hey, it's like kind of like I mentioned the security issue before. Just talking about stuff like that happens and raising awareness. Like, why is it just a bit difficult sometimes? Like, does it need to be like that? Can we just have a chat and just be like, hey, we deserve to be here as well and be heard? And I'm not interested in having a conversation about or getting into arguments about, you know, oh, it's because they're not good enough or anything, because I think that's bullshit. And there are just different barriers sometimes, and they affect people differently, and it's not to play a victim card or anything like that. It's just to have a conversation. Yeah,
and obviously after that, then you must get a lot of females reaching out to you saying, look, I want to, can you mentor me? Can you help me? I want to get into that sort of thing. And that,
I do a lot of mentoring now.
Which is cool.
It's really cool. I love mentoring. It's not, I wouldn't say it's exclusively women, but I think women are just like gravitate towards me, obviously. So I do mentor a lot more women because they just tend to reach out. But like young guys as well. And I just love teaching the next generation of photographers and creatives, and try to help them so they don't make the same mistakes that I made, because I made a lot of mistakes.
and even so, I mean, everyone makes mistakes, and that's part of it. But even you said you didn't pick up a camera until you're in your early 30s.
Yeah.
So imagine the mistakes you made if you pick up a camera when you're 15. Like, you've still got that 30 years of life experience
and business experience. I think the hardest part is actually, it's not the photography. Like, the photography is the easy part. It's the business stuff. It's the networking. It's knowing how to navigate through an industry that it can be very tricky, and there's lots of like unwritten rules. It's all that stuff. It's like if nobody tells you, like I didn't know, for example, that you're meant to wear black when you shoot. You don't get told that until someone literally screams at you, like, why the fuck are you not wearing black? Because, you know, so just being able to educate
people. And that's cool that you've got the opportunity now where you can teach kids, and it's cool because you did start at a mature-ish age. But
old bitch. I was old bitch.
But that is really cool, because I'm sure there's lots of people that think, oh, you've got to do. Look, you look at Rule on the other end of the spectrum.
Totally.
People think, oh, you've got to start when you're 13. Well, it's not too late to start when you're a bit older.
I literally just did a keynote last weekend about it's never too late, and to try and inspire, and this was to an older group of women as well, to say, don't think just because you're not a spring chicken, you know, you can't do this. Like, there's pathways for us. We we want to say something as artists as well. Being older, we doesn't mean that we stop having a voice or wanting to create or telling the world how we see it, if that makes sense.
And it's still okay to make mistakes. You know, as a mature person, you can still, and then you can.
Don't we always, like, that's what I think, like, that's one thing I get frustrated about in this current society that we live in, is that people are being judged on their worst mistake or their worst day and not being allowed to grow and learn. And that frustrates me.
That is one thing that I really dislike about the whole council culture thing, is that it should be about educating people and not just giving them one chance and then they're done. Do you know what I mean?
It's horrific.
Like, so if some guy makes a bad tweet, you can't just like say that's it, they're done. Say, well, what was your problem? What did you do this? Have you got a drug and alcohol issue? What has brought this on? Can we educate
Maybe
you?
It was just a dumb joke. Maybe the joke didn't land. Maybe it was in poor taste. Maybe like there's so many maybes that like, you know, I don't know. I feel like there's a younger generation that is constantly out to who we cancelling today, and I think it's awful. Like,
it is
really, really awful.
And then you've got to think that mentality is worse than just making a bad joke. You are actually being spiteful enough to want to shut down someone's whole career because they may or may not have done one thing. Yeah,
it's like, there's a really great book that changed my whole opinion on this. It's called So You've Been Publicly Shamed by John Ronson. I read it a long time ago now, but I definitely feel like there was a time on Twitter where it always made me feel uneasy, but I definitely probably would have jumped on a pylon back in the day. And I read this book and it changed I was like, from that day forward, these people are human beings. They are better than their worst joke or their worst, well, even if what they said was horrific or whatever. These people that think that cancel culture doesn't exist are living in a fantasy land. And the thing is, it might not exist for the famous people. Like, yes, they can continue and earn income. For the people that are in the little crochet clubs or the little whatever communities where something happens, they are completely ostracized and their lives are ruined, and it happens every single day. And there's so many examples of it that when people say to me that it doesn't exist, I'm like, either you're not, like, I can't even believe it anymore. I'm just like...
Yeah. No, that's a very, very, very good point. I've never thought about it. People get cancelled on a public scale, but there's people in small communities...
It's the small community stuff that I see, and it happens every single day. It's, you know, like, you know, Louis C.K., whatever, he can still have a career or whatever, like, it's fine, you know. And people can make a judgment on whether they think he served a time for what he did or not. I don't like to make huge... sweeping judgments. I think it was pretty shit with what he did, but do I think he should never have a career again? I'm pretty on the fence about that. I think, you know, probably should have go away for a little bit and then
learn your lesson, do your time.
Yeah, and like
show that you've matured and you've grown from it. I think
for sure. You know, as a woman, I think about what he did, and I think it's absolutely abhorrent. I think it's disgusting, and I think you're using power in a situation for your own gratification. There's like not much lower than that. But yeah, I don't know if that means you never get to work again. Like, I don't know where that line is. This is what I'm saying is, like, I don't have strong opinions. I'd rather have a conversation and talk through these types of issues. And I cannot stand the shutting down of conversation. As someone that's just gone through a injury where I wasn't able to talk about this shit online, or, like I said, bleep out the words because you still can't talk about it in some circles. Like, I never want that to be the case for anyone. I'm just like, we should be able to speak our truth. All I'm telling you is something happened to me. It's not disinformation. It's not misinformation. Everybody should know that there is a risk, and it's not to say we're not against anything. I'm not saying anything about anything. This is not a statement. This is saying I did what you told me. Something went wrong and I was completely abandoned. I think that's wrong.
And every drug you take in any situation, whether it's a vaccine or whether it's an antibiotic that your doctor gives you, has side effects and has risks. Everything does.
Literally
everything. So why was this not... was this, you know, recent thing somehow different. That's kind of baffling. You know what I mean?
It's so baffling that when I think about it, it makes, because what happened originally is, first of all, we were told we were lying and that we were part of the movement, which is just ridiculous. I'm like, I took 2 vaccines. I don't know. It's so anti-intellectual for somebody to tell me. I'm like, I can't even have a conversation with someone that says that to me because that's just stupid. Yeah. So if you're going to go, I won't even have a conversation with you. But if you want to engage with me, I can tell you my experience to say I was extremely on board with this. I talked Joel into having it where he was terrified of having the vaccine because I thought it was important for us to be back touring. He was so nervous about something happening to him like it happened to me.
Yeah.
So then you look at that and you're like, well, who's the silly one in that situation questioning something? When something goes wrong, first of all, they tell you you're lying. Then they tell you you're crazy. Then they tell you, oh, but there's reactions to which is it?
Yeah.
Because it's got to be one of them. And if it's the latter, yes, that's true. But now we're not available for compensation. You've got to jump through all these hurdles. You don't qualify, all of this bullshit. And like, all of the messaging around what happened to us is that it's mild, that it's transient, all this bullshit. And 2 years later, it's like not mild when I can't go for a run. So, anyway, this will be a whole tangent. You probably get.
No. Well, look, we might do some bleeping and some snipping at him there. But no, it is. But it's.
Feel free to beep out all the bad words.
I get that it would be extremely frustrating, and I didn't know because obviously you can't say anything. So how could anyone really?
The thing that I saw, which was really frustrating, was at the time I was Twitter verified. I'm not anymore because Elon's changed all the Twitter. But anyway, at the time I was Twitter verified. And so, you know that when you tweet something, you're going to get a certain amount of audience. And what I started seeing it took me a long time to talk about it, like a good 8 months. When I did start talking about it, it was like talking into the abyss. Like nobody was seeing my tweets.
It's like shadow banned and stuff.
Yeah. And it took so long. So when the Twitter files came out like a few months ago, they finally verified that yes, that's exactly what they were doing. No one would believe me. Everyone thought I was crazy. And I'm like, nobody's seeing my tweets.
Yeah, and how many thousands of
12,000 on.
So that's not.
And then on Instagram, same thing. Like you just get shadow banned, and nobody sees my stuff. Anyway, it's fine. It's like the thing for me is to have conversations with people one-on-one, to say, not to scare anyone, just to say there's a whole community of people out there that have gone through something horrific and we were abandoned. And I don't think that's the Australian way. I don't think you roll up your sleeves and do what you're told, which we all did in my situation. This is what you told us to do. There's people out there probably saying you're a fucking sheep or whatever. That's fine. I have my reasons, and I have very firm. I would have taken rat poison if I'm completely honest. At that point, I was so desperate to shoot again.
Yeah.
So I'm not stupid, and I'm not a sheep. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I was so desperate to work again, because work for me is my soul. It's my entire life. My shooting for me is my whole being. It's not just a job where I can just be like, fuck it. So yes, I did do that. And I guess you could say these are the consequences for that. But my point is, you don't abandon people. You don't ignore them, and you don't pretend that they're crazy.
Is it getting better? Is there any avenue?
It is getting better. Like I said, it took me 18 months to get my actual diagnosis. I had to persist because I knew from the 4th day what had happened. I could feel it. I could feel it was my heart. And the acceptance around stuff and doctors being a little bit more willing to talk about it and being open to it, it's definitely better. But, I can't, to go for compensation, for example, you have to have spent at least one night in hospital. I was never admitted to hospital.
Yep.
I was told by one occasion that I should seek therapy for my anxiety issues from a nurse in hospital. This is why I've got inflammation of my heart. I got told to go see a therapist. So some of this shit, like, I will never get over, and I will never trust the medical establishment again. And if anything happened ever again, I would be in a goddamn bunker somewhere. Like, in
your studio, just shooting, so just like.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I would never do that again. Like my worldview now has completely changed. But again, looking back I think about would I do things differently, and I just can't think of a world that I would have done it differently based on the circumstances we were in Melbourne. And if you weren't in Melbourne, nobody can have an opinion on this shit.
No, we were told that you needed to do this just to do anything.
Anything, yeah. I've had arguments with people, especially a lot of people online who just tell me I'm an idiot and why did you do it? And I'm like, if you're not in Melbourne, I don't want to have the conversation. And if you were in Melbourne and you were strong enough to withhold,
people lost their jobs, they couldn't go to the
people lost
pub,
their careers
they couldn't
and
go
their lives and everything. And I have a lot of admiration for those people now, if I'm perfectly honest, because I couldn't have done it that time. It was, like I said, I was so desperate to get back to doing what I loved, that I would have done anything. I after 2 years, it was enough. Like I was in a very bad place mentally, and I was like, this is what we need to do. This is what they've told us, you know.
And that was, I was similar sort of, and I think, probably 90% of people, not 90, but a lot of people felt we were backed into a corner and we just had to do it and get it fucking done,
Yeah, it's coercion of the highest degree, really. So yeah, unfortunately. And like, I keep saying this, I'm not angry about what happened to me. I'm angry about the way we were treated when something happened. I just think it's unacceptable.
It definitely isn't acceptable. And hopefully you find some refuge with some people and groups online where you can sort of, and I have. I found amazing community. We've all helped each other, which has been great. Amazing naturopath who's literally saved my life. Amazing husband who's been amazing. Like all of these things, there's been lots of positives. I met some really great people. There's a goddamn mural of my head in Brunswick that's Scotty Marsh. If anyone doesn't know about this project, I have seen that. I saw that. I shared that the other day, I think, on your socials.
So Scotty Marsh is an amazing street artist
from Sydney.
Approached me to do this mural, which is like hilarious because it's a giant mural of my head. But he's doing a project on people, and I was the second person. But he also does a podcast, which is a really amazing podcast, talking about what happened to us. And he's talking to other. So his gateway into that is he's also, and we bonded over that because I saw that he started to post about it, and I saw that Pedestrian magazine, Pedestrian TV or whatever, they wrote this article about him because all he said was like, shout out to all the people that are going through this right now because I'm going through this. I've got myocarditis and and he said for those people and also people that have long COVID, it really sucks. And they wrote this article about him being problematic and anti, all this bullshit. And I was just like, reached out to him and I'm like, I cannot believe that this is where, like, on what planet are people that did what we were told suddenly put in, and I'm not even saying that that's a bad place to be, but it's like, it's just not true.
Yeah.
Why are we being put on a label? Why are we being put a label that's not true? It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, anyone who goes against the grain is labelled problematic. You could look at school, you know what I mean? Yeah. If you just question any teacher, they say you're a problem child.
Problematic is probably one of my least favourite words now. If I hear that somebody's problematic, I'll probably want to be friends with them.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's how you find out who the good kids to hang out with.
Yeah, the cool kids.
The cool kids.
Actually, one of my friends makes T-shirts, shout out Richie Hardcore, that says problematic, and like just the best merch idea ever.
But you don't like the word, but you're...
No, I mean like in an ironic way. Do you know what I mean? Like cool. It's hilarious. Like that's... Yeah, where you kind of reclaim the word,
That definitely right. We don't want to end it on a somber note. So we're gonna go.
Cool.
We're gonna go back to. Yeah, we mentioned before you did shoot a cover for Rolling Stone.
I did. Yeah.
And would you like to tell us about Rolling Stone covers? I think you might have done more than one.
I've only done one Rolling Stone. I've done 2 NME covers, 1 Rolling Stone cover. Both in terms of like goals, like long-term goals were big bucket list items for me, just kind of legacy publications that have been around the music industry for a long time, both NME and Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone's the one that obviously everyone knows. And also I got that phone call to do that shoot with Amy Shark, I was actually really unwell at that time. So I'd shot with Amy, and then I went overseas. I shot with her to do just like general press shots and stuff, which was really cool. I hadn't worked with her before, and it was really fun. I went overseas to work with Kingswood, an Americana festival. Talk about like completely different genres.
Yeah.
Country festival. Love those guys so much, but they're kind of gone from kind of rock stuff to more country leaning stuff.
Have they really?
Yeah, it's really cool actually. And
so
I
they
love
found
those
an audience
guys.
over there.
Yeah, so they went to Americana Festival last year, and I got a grant to go over and kind of cover their trip. But right before I left, I had a massive relapse. Actually, on my shoot with Amy, I could literally barely stand up, and I had to kind of hide the fact there was a full day shoot, and most of the shoot I was sitting down because I couldn't actually stand up most of the time. So I was really, really unwell. I was like stubborn because I'm an idiot, and was like, I'll be fine. Like went to America, was not fine. Was really, really unwell. Could not walk up a flight of stairs. Don't go to New York, by the way, if you can't walk a flight of stairs.
That's a bad idea.
So it's a really bad idea. So I was literally like crawling upstairs, or like going up. It's up my bum. Like it's so bad. Such a bad time. Anyway, came back and was just in such a bad way, and I got the phone call from Rolling Stone to say, we want you to shoot the next cover. And I literally was just like, it was extremely emotional, because at that point I felt like I was potentially losing my career. Do you know what I mean? Like I felt like, can I still do this? Because the travel was taking such a toll on my body. Everything was hard. I couldn't shoot shows. I tried to shoot a show and I couldn't. The venue had like a ramp that went, I could barely walk up the ramp.
Yeah.
Like everything was just such searing chest pain. Everything hurt, everything was too much. So I got this phone call to shoot Amy, and it was just like, yeah, it was really emotional. And apparently she had said she really loved the experience shooting with me for her press shots, and wanted to work with me again, and which is really cool. And I loved working with the team, with Poppy and Katie from Rolling Stone on that cover. And yeah, it was just like it was all female crew. It was like really, really lovely experience. I flew out my assistant Jade, who I love working with. We flew to Sydney, and yeah, it was just like a really cool, like bucket list moment.
And
nice.
And it's got to be cool, because even for the artist, like Amy Shark's obviously extremely huge, but that's got to be a bit of a bucket list for her as well.
It was like, that was one of the things that they said, was that it was like her biggest dream. So it's really nice when those things come together. It was a bit of a different shoot for Amy as well. Like it was kind of a bit sexier than usual, and she had no top on, but she had like her hair covering her and stuff, and we wanted to shoot that in a really tasteful way that wasn't.
She probably felt more comfortable with the whole female
for
cast
sure,
as well.
yeah, and not like in a sleazy way or anything. Very empowered way, and we all just it was a really cool shoot. Really
and
nice.
what about the NME ones?
NME one, the first one was G Flip, which was really cool. That was really fun to shoot G in the studio. Got G's drumsticks and lit them on fire, which is really cool. And the second one was for Rule, which was also cool, but it was the same day as his album cover shoot. And their management, Nate, approached me and said, hey, they want to do this. Do you think you can fit it in the same day? And like shooting an album cover, like Rule's debut album, by the way. So like, no pressure. And then can you shoot this cover and feature? But look, if it hadn't have been Rule, I probably would have been hesitant. Because it was Rule, I knew that we would be fine, and we were. And I'm really proud of that cover. I really, really like that cover. It's really cool. So
if there was going to be anyone that was going to be easy to work with, what would be the person you've already taken a million
photos of, and can work together in our sleep at this point. It's like, it's very intuitive and like telepathic almost.
And is he a workhorse as well? I sort of has to.
Like, yes, he is. He's very easy to work with, like he's works very well in front of the camera. He's obviously very easy photogenically to shoot. Everything looks good on him in terms of styling and stuff. So it makes my job very easy. Yeah.
So if
he's a freak of nature, so
yeah. And he can sing luckily as well.
he's a bloody good singer. So everything kind of falls into place.
Comes together.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle Grace Hunder, thanks for coming in and chatting with me today.
Sorry to be such a downer there.
No,
Points.
you didn't have to. No. Look, you want to talk your
Yeah.
thing, and I'm glad you did, and hopefully, we can keep it all in there.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't get like taken down. Do you put it on YouTube? YouTube does not like it.
Yeah, I know we don't. Yeah, YouTube's where we put everything. We're all on
Okay,
YouTube.
just beep it out.
We'll see what
We'll see.
We'll see
Google
we
what
can
you
do.
should do. Although having said that, I did a whole podcast on the whole story, and it got taken down from YouTube, and then she appealed it, and then it got put back up.
Okay,
So there's
maybe.
yeah,
okay.
because we're not giving any medical advice. We're just talking about what
Just
happened.
talking about your story and your.
There's nothing to say. Don't do anything. Do anything. It's literally this is what happened. So
This is what happened. We're telling it how it is.
telling how it is.
All right. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate you. And
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thanks.
3,000.